Bottas resigns for Mercedes. What now for Sebastian Vettel? And Renault aren't very happy with Racing Point. Lando Norris's stock seems to have risen and gone through the roof, and it's back to the drawing board for Ferrari. This is the F1 PitBox. Welcome to the F1 PitBox on a slightly different day today because of a load shedding in South Africa. And it was a cruise in the park around the mountains, Gary, for Lewis Hamilton last Sunday and Saturday.
Well, it certainly was, yeah. But I think Saturday obviously was a great afternoon for Hamilton. I mean, he just put an absolute fantastic lap together. The kind of thing that you expect from Lewis Hamilton, to be totally honest, in those sort of conditions. And it really just sets up the rest of the weekend for him. So I think this weekend showing us just exactly what that Mercedes-Benz is all about.
Yeah, I mean, Gary, here is the multi-million-dollar question. How far ahead is Mercedes compared to everybody else?
Well, listen, they won easily, you've got to say. So at this track, we hope it's only a track-related thing. I think from the onset of the season, we believed that they were going to be the car to beat. Yes, you've got to believe that they've got something in hand. Should they be under a bit more pressure? You can't believe they've shown everything. And again, I just refer back to the wet and the lap in the wet by Hamilton on Saturday. It was outstanding. So that car definitely, as we all know and expected, has a lot of pace, and I think definitely allowing the drivers to perform like they are without putting absolutely everything on the line, which is good for them and a little bit worrying for everybody else.
Yeah, very much so. And listen, we'll talk about the race. We'll go through team by team in a short while, but let's focus on some of the things that are happening off the track at the moment. And of course, we look forward to this weekend's Hungarian Grand Prix. News that has come out of Germany, Gary. We know that Valtteri Bottas now has signed a new contract with Mercedes-Benz. It seems as though the doors are shutting for Sebastian Vettel everywhere. And I'll say it again, I'll be desperately sad if we don't have Vettel on the grid. But the big talk, and we actually spoke about this a couple of shows back, is what about the opportunity of Sebastian Vettel joining the Aston Martin team for next year, which seems like a very, very good bet. The car is unbelievable, the way that we saw it perform over this past weekend as well. You've got to believe that Lawrence Stroll would definitely want someone like Sebastian Vettel in his team.
I think it would be very difficult to turn a driver like Vettel down. And, I think when we spoke about Alonso and the sort of opportunities for commercially that exist for a team, I think the same applies to Sebastian Vettel. So it could be for Stroll. It's certainly a very, very good deal. You've got, a four-time world champion in your works car now, in Aston Martin factory car. It may not be the worst bet for Vettel, and in fact, it may be his only bet. So, but the fact of the matter is, it's not a car that's languishing. It's actually performing quite well. We'll speak about it later, I'm sure. But there's definitely some assistance coming from Mercedes-Benz in some way. We don't even know exactly what it is. But you've got to believe that with the Toto Wolff being involved in the team as well, it's not a bad situation.
Yeah, you just have to, leave his overalls out during the summer months in the sunshine and just get them to a lighter shade of red, and then he'll be ready for the pink Mercedes. But this now does leave us with a question: if, and we're talking hypothetically, if Vettel had to go to racing or Aston Martin next year, he's not going to get rid of his son, Lance Stroll, which means that Sergio Perez, who's driving magnificently, and I've always rated this guy. I think he went to McLaren too early in his career. But now all of a sudden this leaves Perez with, number one, an opportunity to change teams. He comes with a lot of money and sponsorship as well. What openings does he have? I was thinking perhaps the Haas team, perhaps even Alfa Romeo, and I don't know, but AlphaTauri, I suppose. Those are the three options that are available to him.
Well, that would be an option available to him. I think, it's worrying options. It's not as good as what he's got now, that's for sure. We don't really know what Haas's future is going to be, and there's a lot of speculation around them as well. They haven't got a car that's performing this year. it's a tough one with regards to that. AlphaTauri, you've got to believe that it'll stick with their Red Bull program, and perhaps maybe lose one of those drivers in their team as well. And, bring in one of their junior drivers, which they've got a lot of, depending on I don't know who the new guy is at the moment, to be honest. I've lost a bit of touch with the junior formula, but, bring someone else into their team. So Perez, unfortunately for him, it probably won't be looking that good. But as you said, a bit of money in his pocket, I think certainly can get something done somewhere on the grid.
Yeah, it would also be sad to lose someone like Perez. But if I just go Vettel, Perez, I know where I'm going to side. Okay, well, we'll wait to see where that develops. Now, the big news that came out after the Grand Prix on Sunday was Renault putting in a protest against the Racing Point team. And now, I've been reading so many comments about people sitting and saying, what a load of nonsense, this can't happen. There's nothing that's similar. I must just go through the Appendix 6, okay, in terms of the sporting regulations. And this is what Renault have protested specifically about the Racing Point car. They've said air ducts, as regulated by Articles 11.4, 11.5, and 11.6 of the F1 technical regulations. In other words, teams need to hold the intellectual property of these air ducts. Now, we've got a picture of the air ducts, Gary, between the Mercedes car and the Racing Point car, and they do not look too dissimilar. Let's be very, very honest. From the start of the season, when we went out in testing, it came out, everyone's called this Racing Point the pink Mercedes, and now all of a sudden we're seeing that it is an incredibly fast car. Have they shared something along the line? I must say, I think the FIA have an extremely difficult job to try and prove that Racing Point didn't make this themselves. Gary, how are they going to prove that this is not shared? Or is shared?
They need to take... Well, yeah, they need to obviously take the parts, have a look at them, have a look at what's inside them. Obviously, they are integral, as we all know, to the aerodynamics of the car as well. Everything in Formula One works in tandem. They need to have a look inside and see if it's actually, the same inside as well. We don't know how they look. None of us know how they look. They say that they've looked at photographs and copied the parts or photographs and what have you, which would give you an idea of why they look the same. But I think the big test is going to be to see if they actually internally resemble what is on the Mercedes-Benz. Look, I mean, I can't believe, and we're not in Formula One, anyway, we're close where we can really go and find out right now, but you've got to believe that they use a little bit more than just photographs to design and build that car for this year, which is a great car. And I don't really have a problem with it. At the end of the day, it's great to see another car that's competitive, but the regulations are the regulations. And I'm sure that they would have, if they did receive some sort of information from somewhere, who knows, it's happened before in Formula One. I doubt whether they would leave everything identical in order to put themselves in a position where they could be found illegal in the case of this situation with the protest now. But you never know.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, these guys know exactly. I'm sure before the season started, they knew, listen, there are going to be people who are going to question everything. And you brought up something very, very important. This is not just about cooling the car. It's not just about cooling the brakes. This affects the aero, the underneath flow of the car. There are incredibly critical points of a Formula One car, which affect so many other variables as well. So I think the FIA have a very difficult job to try and sort this out. If they do find, Gary, that it seems as though there are shared parts, I mean, this could be a huge setback for Racing Point and it's a huge if, which would mean that they would have to more than likely go back to their 2019 spec Racing Point car, and all of a sudden they're going to be facing a massive uphill battle. Plus, on top of it, they could get all of their points taken away. Well, from this Grand Prix, nobody protested in Austria, but for the Styrian Grand Prix, they could lose the points that both Perez and Stroll got.
Yeah, exactly. And the biggest problem is, he's quite right. He said, should they have to go back to last year's car? It's obviously something they just don't want to do. That car will put them right at the back of the field. So let's hope that the parts are different. They've also lodged, of course, as to what components may be shared or what they've done. So there's record of all this sort of stuff. So, there may have been an omission there, by mistake maybe, that they just thought, well, we don't, who knows, but I hope that it's not, that they are okay. I just hate to see a competitive car slip down the order for something like this. And of course, then we spoke about Vettel. It would ruin any chance of Vettel going to the team either. To just derail the entire process. Just when the team is starting to sort of find themselves and get back on their feet, they didn't have a great year last year.
You never know, Gary. They might come to some deal between the FIA and the team, as Ferrari and the FIA did with the engine. So we'll wait and see that. Okay, let's get.
I was going to say, sorry to interrupt you. I was going to say they're not Ferrari, so I doubt whether that deal is going to be put on the table for them, to be totally honest with you.
We'll have to wait and see. All right, let's get back to the Styrian Grand Prix. Of course, it was Austria version 2, and this is how it finished. Lewis Hamilton very, very comfortable at the top. Valtteri Bottas, I suppose, would be happy with a second. He still leads the championship, and Max Verstappen down in third place. Gary, let's go through team by team as how they finished, and start off with Mercedes. I mean, Lewis Hamilton was just sublime. That qualifying lap on the Saturday in the wet was just something really, really very, very special. And I mean, that's such a beautiful photograph there as well. And I'm going to come back to, I asked the question, how far ahead do you think Mercedes are compared to the rest? And I basically sat there and said, well, you've got to look at where Alex Albon finished. And the reason I say that is because I think, Max Verstappen, in my opinion, is one of those phenomena that comes into Formula One, as we've seen with the Alonsos and the Schumachers and the Lewis Hamiltons and the Vettels of the world. He's not really the gauge of where the competitive car is. So if Albon's 44 seconds down the road against a Mercedes, which is driving at 8/10, you got to believe that gap is well within a minute over 71 laps, anything between 0.7 and 0.8 of a second, a lap quicker than everybody else. Am I being unfair to Alex Albon? Or, I see that as the real state of play at the moment.
Look, even if you halve that, Sasha, it's still a massive gap. So, yeah, as we said, I think Hamilton has now got out the gate. We've kind of now seen what the Mercedes-Benz can actually do. And the only time we'll really see how quick that car is, to be totally honest with you, is if either Bottas can take the fight to Hamilton and race him wheel for wheel, or if somebody else miraculously gets their act together and starts putting him under pressure. But as I said, I think they've got something in hand in any event. So should that happen, I think they'll just be able to go a little bit quicker. So they've done a great job over the last couple of years, and you've just got to say that, once again, that they've certainly owned the new turbo era in Formula One.
Yeah, and also the other thing is they're also just so comfortable and so confident within the organization. I know that there are one or two members that are going to be leaving from a technical point of view. I don't think it's going to disrupt the way that Toto Wolff runs it. Also having the confidence, Gary, to re-sign Valtteri Bottas. They haven't yet signed Lewis Hamilton. We must just state that, but I'm sure that's just a question of how many pennies he wants or how many zeros at the end of his contract. But to have the confidence again to sign Valtteri for 2021 is great news for Valtteri, but terrible news for George Russell.
Yes, I think so. George Russell in particular now has had two good showings, but at the end of the day, so has Valtteri. He's had two very, very good races. And nobody can complain with the job that he's doing in the team. And from a team point of view, yes, you've got to understand they've probably done exactly the right thing to sign Valtteri. What's up again? They know what they've got. He's capable of winning a couple of Grand Prix, certainly of taking points from everybody else if Hamilton's going to keep on running out at the front there. He's the right man for the job. I just think from an emotional point of view, we certainly would have liked to have seen a guy like maybe even Vettel in there, which we spoke about a couple of weeks back. Yeah. But yes, I think for Russell, it's a big disappointment, and his next bet now is to hope that Williams get themselves together and can give him a better car. He did a fantastic job in qualifying as well. I mean, it was outstanding. They dragged at Williams, I think, up to 12th, if I'm not mistaken.
Eventually starting 11th. I mean, amazing.
Yeah, it was a great weekend for him, and I think the kind of thing that we all expect Russell to be doing. He just needs the car, but you got to be patient sometimes, and rather be in a position going forward where you can maybe get hold of that Williams seat. Hamilton, I don't think he's going to be there forever either. Russell's still a young guy, and Bottas has got another year to go, so it's not going to kill him. I think just play the long game here and I think hold out for the Mercedes drive if you are in fact in that sort of channel, of getting that seat. It's without doubt the way to go. To get impatient and maybe sign with somebody else that's further up the grid, I don't think is going to serve the long-term ambition well at all.
Yeah, and I agreed with that. And of course, 2022, we have all of the regulation changes as well. All right, let's move on to the Red Bull. I think Max Verstappen just drove his heart out. He's an incredible racing driver. He tried his best. And I think, he got more out of that car than maybe what the car deserves. And it goes back to maybe what I was saying about Alex Albon. But we'll talk about Albon. He tried his best, Gary. And I mean, he fought hard to try and keep Valtteri behind him, and they had a bit of a scrap, the two of them together, which was a nice little battle. But once Bottas got past him, I mean, that was tickets for him. But in a way, Max must be sitting and saying, what do we have to do, or what does Mercedes have that just keeps them that far ahead of us?
Yeah, I think it's frustrating for a guy like Verstappen. There's no doubt. I mean, he is a title contender. Give him the right package. We all know that he's going to be up there. So I think also, as you quite rightly said, the gap between him and his teammate was huge as well. Albon definitely wants to be a little bit closer than that. There's no two ways about it. And let's see what happens. I mean, nothing's done with Aston Martin and Vettel, but still, you've got to believe that the Vettel Red Bull thing is not the worst idea on the planet. So let's see. Albon's really definitely got a point to prove. He is quick and doing a great job. Definitely did a better job than what Gasly did when he drove for the Red Bull team last year in the first couple of races or first half of the season or whatever it was. So yeah, but Max, 45 seconds up the road from your teammates is, that's a bit of a hiding.
No, it's a proper hiding, unfortunately. But talking of Alex Albon, listen, in his defense, Christian Horner came out after the race and a couple of days afterwards and said, listen, they are mystified as to Albon's pace. So perhaps there was something with the car, so we've got to give better judgment on that as well. But what is it with Alex Albon, Gary, and Mercedes-powered cars? We've got a graphic over here. In Brazil, it was with the silver Mercedes. In Austria, it was with the black Mercedes, which is now. And then, of course, this past weekend, he had a coming together with Sergio Perez in the pink Mercedes. However, this time he actually came off okay. And if anything, he destroyed Perez's front wing and lost Perez a position. But Albon must be sitting and saying, just please do not put a Mercedes anywhere close to me.
Look, look at those photos. It's quite uncanny, actually. It just finds himself in the same position over and over and over, and just probably working out when I'm racing with somebody, maybe just try and find that extra inch or two on the track and give the guys some space. But it's not up to me. They keep on driving into me, so I've got to give them a bit of space, and hopefully we don't touch. So yeah, but as you said, luckily they didn't crash, and he managed to carry on and get a result, which for him I think was great, because I think the weekend before his Grand Prix, the Austrian Grand Prix, was a very, very big letdown.
They are massive. I mean, that was a race he actually could have won, and who knows, how the psyche changes after that. Then one of the other youngsters on the grid at the moment, I mean, his stock is just flying. This guy is having the time of his life out there. Two brilliant results over the last two weekends. And of course, maybe this one was very opportunistic, but he made the most of what was available. And that, of course, is Lando Norris, a podium in Austria and now a fifth place in the Styrian Grand Prix. It was a fabulous and wonderful drive from this young kid again. And also, you got to say, great teamwork between McLaren, knowing which driver was going to have a better potential. Sainz, unfortunately, got screwed up in the pit stop, but another brilliant drive from Lando Norris.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say his pace at the end of the races is just fantastic. I mean, both weekends he really needed to get the job done. And, he certainly did that again. It was very, very exciting. So, yes, I think, a driver that if he keeps on going like this, McLaren either bring out the big checkbook or, he's going to start, I think, just getting interest from other teams, because he's the genuine thing. I think we knew it last year. His qualifying results were fantastic, but he's converting it into race results now this year, which is important. So it's improvement all the way. And you've got to believe that there's still quite a bit to come from Lando Norris.
Yeah, Gary. I mean, you argue you're getting the people out there as well with Ferrari and the doldrums, and we'll get to them in a short while. You know, they've signed Carlos Sainz for next year. All of a sudden, the first two races, Lando stuck it to Carlos Sainz. Everyone's going, "Gee, have Ferrari made the right decision?" Carlos Sainz is still a fantastic racing driver, and had it not been for the pit stop problem that he had, where he lost 3 seconds, and because of that, lost 3 places on down the road, Carlos would have been right up there. The two of them are pushing each other brilliantly, which is wonderful to see, and that's what you want from a team.
Absolutely, there's no doubt about it. And you can speak to anybody, any driver that's worth his salt will tell you that they want a quick teammate in order to find that bit of extra pace in themselves and push them on to better and higher places. So yeah, Sainz I think qualified well this weekend. He did a great job in qualifying. Qualifying's big, as we know. I mean, you've got to qualify well to be in with a good shot, and he did that fantastically well. And I don't think Ferrari's got anything to worry about, certainly from Sainz in terms of just being there consistently. I think he's going to be good. But he's still got he's got a job to do, and as you said, I think also enjoying himself. I mean, yes, driving from McLaren, there's no ill feeling. It's not like a Vettel situation where he's been dropped. There was everything was above board. He's doing the best he can for the team. They're doing the best for him, and I'm telling you, the guy actually couldn't be in a better place right now.
Yeah. One last thing on McLaren, Gary. I mean, they're running with the Renault power, and you can see that they just don't have that same power that even Honda has or Mercedes. Next year, they've got the Mercedes power. I mean, yeah. There's a huge chance that McLaren could well be second to Mercedes come 2021.
There's no doubt, and you've got to believe that Ricciardo signed that deal based on a lot of that. Just where's the team going, what's happening. The Mercedes-Benz engine, I think, was always going to be an absolute plus for anybody wanting to drive that car and for the team. But they just got on with it. They just really, last year was such a huge year for McLaren, and I think people would have been happy in the team even if they'd kind of just been where they were, but they've just taken it up another notch. The team is really looking good, and I tell you what, for a team like McLaren to be where they were, certainly in the recent Honda years, was sort of very, very demoralizing for them and for everybody else watching. I mean, it's just such a fantastic and such an iconic team. So I'm enjoying seeing them, climb their way back up to the front of the grid.
Yeah, it's just wonderful to see, and I couldn't agree. You want those teams to be out there as well. Okay, let's get on to the Racing Point team. I got to say, without a doubt, the driver of the day, in my opinion, Sergio Perez. I think he drove brilliantly. Take away everything about the Renault protests and where it is at the moment. This guy has just shown, put him in a decent piece of machinery. He knows how to get the best out of it, Gary. He's brilliant when it comes to managing his race and his tires, and that's what brought him right up there at the end. Unfortunately, right at the end, he did lose that one place to Lando Norris through, the coming together and losing his front wing. But Perez drove a very, very solid race, and also stuck his hand up saying, Mr. Stroll, if you want to sign Sebastian Vettel, I'm not that bad.
No, this is the thing, and he's only got now 8 races. They're confirmed to go to make sure that if he wants to stay in that seat, he's got to really perform well. And the unfortunate thing for he's got to outperform the boss's son, which makes life a little bit more difficult for him. But yeah, look, Perez has had his moments when he's been outstanding. There's no two ways about it. Even back to the Sauber days, that Brazilian Grand Prix in the wet. I mean, he was right up there, almost competing for a win. So Perez is a good driver. He certainly is, but there's also days when he doesn't blow as maybe as hot as he should.
Now listen, so it brings us to the word of consistency, and now this is where I get a little bit upset when it comes to the stewards and those who are making decisions when it comes to penalties. The week before in the Austrian Grand Prix, we saw Lewis Hamilton and Alex Albon come together. Yes, it spun out Alex Albon, and Lewis got the 5-second penalty. And in a way, we all sort of breathed a little bit of a sigh of relief, because it meant that Lewis is actually going to have to fight back and for him to get into the lead, and he doesn't lead the championship at the moment. All of a sudden, you get this incident. Lance Stroll dives down the inside of Danny Ricciardo. Ricciardo could have turned in and taken them both out. Ricciardo takes uses his brain or whatever, and manages to steer himself off the track. And they do touch, but they don't spin each other around. But Lance Stroll also goes completely off the circuit as well. Yes, it allowed Lando Norris to come through, but all of a sudden, no penalty is given to any driver. And you sit there and say, but that's not dissimilar to what happened between Lewis Hamilton and Alex Albon the week before at the same corner. I plead just for consistency. You can't sit there and penalize the one and then say the other one is a racing incident. I find that laughable.
Well, that's always been the argument, and it's across the board. Consistency from the stewards and driver conduct officials, etc., is critical. But it is a difficult job, and there might be slightly different things that happened this weekend. But yeah, you've got to have consistency. I certainly agree with it, but it's sometimes not as cut and dry as it may look from the outside.
Yeah, there we go. So that was Racing Point. I mean, they finished in the points as well. Let's go on to Renault, and here we go. Now, this also just gets me my goat here, Gary. There's a picture of Danny Ricciardo, and there was Perez, Lance Stroll chasing him quite hard towards the end. The beginning of the race, Danny Ricciardo was one of the only drivers who opted to go onto a different tire compound. Okay, he had his teammate Esteban Ocon, who had a great qualifying, we must say, who decided that he was going to go on the different compound. So he started on the soft rubber, and Danny Ricciardo started on the medium compound Pirelli tire. As we progressed into the race, you could clearly see that Alex Albon was slower than Danny Ricciardo. Ricciardo even put a message through to his team, sitting and saying, "Listen, I'm quicker than the guy." Basically saying, "Listen, let me pass the guy, and let's have a race. I'm on a different strategy. Yeah. Let's have a go." I blame Renault for actually the Renault team for actually messing up Danny Ricciardo's race. Besides the incident with Lance Stroll towards the end, they should have made that call earlier. And somehow they didn't. If you look at the way that they work compared to the way that the McLaren team worked, the way that the Haas team worked, Renault have only got themselves to blame for not getting more points out of this Grand Prix.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everything's got to be good. You've got to put it all together. And yeah, Renault, unfortunately, if you're going to drop your driver, your star driver in the team, it's not going to work. And you've got to qualify up there as well. Ocon did a good job in qualifying. But yes, it's to win a Grand Prix or to score decent points in the Grand Prix. It's not just about the Saturday or Sunday afternoon. It's the whole weekend needs to be put together properly, and that's where a team like Mercedes-Benz really, I think, shows everybody what it's all about. There were days when other teams have been able to do that, or years or whatever it is. But yes, it's critical that the whole package works well. But again, the difficult situation. I don't think. Ricciardo's leaving has made anybody happy in Renault. It's really caught them off guard. They've had to run around and get Alonso back and what have you. So it all contributes to the sort of the harmony in the team and getting everything to work throughout from FP1 right through to the race.
Now, I don't know what it is about Esteban Ocon. As I say, brilliant qualifying in the wet, and that was fantastic. So it just shows his class. But in race pace, Gary, he let himself down. He let, in my opinion, he let the team down. And I'm just concerned for this guy. He's sort of like in a situation with Perez. I know that he's young, and people would sit there and say he's managed by Toto Wolff. But, Renault is the one who's going to make decisions going forward. Ocon is definitely going to have to up his game. Number one, he's got to try and be right there with Danny Ricciardo. And then, of course, next year he's got Fernando Alonso. So, I'm trying not to be too harsh on the youngster, but he has not impressed me thus far when it comes to his actual racing.
Well, listen, maybe Ricciardo is better than we even think. But yes, yeah. If you think back to his years at was it Force India or Force One or whatever it was called at that time, there was a lot of accidents between him and Perez. They were quite equally matched, but a lot of incidents. And then, of course, for me, what sticks out in my mind, of course, that incident in Brazil. It was just kind of like a bit crazy. So you kind of like wonder what's going on there. But yes, for sure, quick driver. But again, it's all good and well to be quick, but you've got to put an entire weekend together and not let the team down and do the right things in the race, especially when you're starting, quite near the front.
Yeah, that's for sure. All right, let's move on to AlphaTauri. And I must say, I was just desperate for Pierre Gasly. Another great qualifying. He's done an exceptional job of out-driving and out-qualifying Danny Kvyat. But wow, they got everything wrong. He got everything wrong, Pierre Gasly, this past weekend. But on the flip side, Danny Kvyat scored a point for the team and himself. He needs that kind of confidence, Gary, because he has been really outgunned by Gasly.
Geez, I tell you what, exactly. He's also got to dig deep. If he wants to stay in Formula One, this has been a dream second shot at Formula One, if you like, to get back into this team.
Yeah.
And the only thing that's going to save him is consistency in results like this. He's just got to keep on putting it together. And we all know the story. Trying to be as quick, or quicker than your teammate.
Gary, I mean, if we look at the AlphaTauri compared to the Red Bull, they both got the Honda power. I was expecting that the AlphaTauri was going to be a little bit quicker than what it is. I'm sure there are some developments, but somehow they're just not the kind of team that I was, maybe hoping them to be. I mean, do you think they're just really struggling in that development department, or maybe they should do like Racing Point and get last year's Red Bull or take some photos of last year's Red Bull?
I don't even think they don't even need the photos. I'm sure they get a lot of information from Red Bull. But listen, a good point actually, because with all the budget caps and all the things that are flying around, I mean, this debate's been going on for the last 15, 20 years. Should customer cars be allowed or not? And if it were the case, I mean, for Racing Point or AlphaTauri to get last year's cars, it would certainly make a lot of sense and save a lot of money as well.
Yeah, I think it's a very, very good point, and I think it is something that the regulators are going to have to look at from 2022. Okay, can you believe it? We're nearly there. Can you believe this for a stat, Gary? The highest placed Ferrari engine car finished in 11th, and that was Kimi Raikkonen. That tells you a story. And, in our first show of the season, before the Austrian Grand Prix, I said, Gary, they'll be lucky Ferrari get into the top 8. Leclerc got Christmas on the first Grand Prix, and then, of course, we had a whole lot of calamity. But if you take the two Ferraris out of the equation, Kimi Raikkonen was the next best Ferrari, or first best Ferrari powered car in 11th place. Desperate times for Alfa Romeo, for Haas and Ferrari, because the Alfa Romeo and the Haas team, as we know, are very, very limited when it comes to budget, and they're relying so much on Ferrari power, and Ferrari are not delivering.
Well, that's the problem. I have with it as well, because you've got two customers there. That really their futures are dependent on what their results are going to be this year. With what's happening in the world right now, you sort of also got to question how long Alpha will be involved with Sauber for, and these are real issues. And what could save them is good performance. So to be unfortunately dumped with an engine that doesn't go, it just obviously exacerbates the problems that you have in the team, and you just put you at such a disadvantage. So it must be very frustrating for Haas and for Sauber to not have what they need, because unfortunately it's not in their hands, but yet in a way everything's reliant on it, as you quite rightly said. So just very, very frustrating.
Very frustrating. Now, and most people who watch the show know that I'm a huge Kimi fan. So, Kimi can do no wrong in my eyes. But the way that he drove in this Grand Prix, I tell you, he was also up for driver of the day. He had to avoid the calamity of the two Ferraris in front of him, which basically put him right at the back of the grid. And from there, he managed to get himself all the way up to 11th place. He has a picture of him watching the two Ferraris. He had to slam on the brakes, and avoid everything else. When I look at the second driver, Giovinazzi, yet again did not impress me. And I've been watching some of the Formula 2 racing, Gary, and if you look at the Ferrari Academy, you've got Callum Eilert, you've got Schwartzman, you've got Mick Schumacher, and you've got Armstrong. And so far, Eilert, Armstrong, Eilert, Schwartzman, and Mick actually had a very, very good race the other day as well. Those guys are chomping at the bit to take a place. Kimi Raikkonen can decide whether or not he wants to go or stay. There's no ways I believe that Sauber are going to sit there and fire Kimi Raikkonen. They know how good he is for their brand as well. But Giovinazzi is on, you've got to believe, on a fingernail of keeping his ride.
Well, for me, the only way for Giovinazzi to really be doing what he needs to be doing is to be beating Raikkonen in every situation, qualifying, out racing him, doing everything better than Kimi Räikkönen, and that's the only thing that I think is going to save Giovinazzi's seat. He's had a lot of chances. I mean, full year last year, there's a couple of races previously with Sauber still. He's had a lot of chances, and really by now it's got it. He has to start beating Kimi. It's as simple as that. I mean, you look at Ricciardo, right? Red Bull beat Vettel, but Leclerc that put Vettel under pressure in the Ferrari team. It's just there's just nothing else to say apart from that's your job, and he's not doing that job right now.
Yeah, there we go. Now here is a very interesting race for the Haas team. Yes, they didn't finish in the points, unfortunately. Neither Grosjean nor Magnussen finished in the points this past Grand Prix. But if you actually watch the two of them race and the battles that they had with, towards the end of the field, these guys did a brilliant job. This was a high-speed testing race for them, and Gary, it was amazing. They made they changed positions with their drivers. They basically sat out there and went and said, listen, if we get into the points, we're going to be lucky, but this is a high-speed test for us. We need to find out what is right and what is wrong with the car. And the car was actually very, very good. They just lacked the power, yet again, unfortunately, caused by not having the power from the Ferrari. But the two drivers did a brilliant job this past weekend. Unlucky not to finish in the points, but they could steal a point if something happens with Racing Point and they lose their 2 points. So I must say, I applaud Haas for the way that they conducted themselves and both of their drivers. I think it was a great performance.
Yeah, certainly so. And again, it's just difficult also to build a car around an engine that's not there, because now you're trying to find speed. You're trying to get this car, as you said, a high-speed test session. You're obviously doing what you would have been doing anyway. But I just think that you're really now trying much harder than you need to in a lot of ways. And it's just not going to be delivered by the engine. And I don't think it would be that stressful if you kind of like knew where you were going future-wise. And okay, well, this may be a year we're going to have to take it on the chin. But when you're under pressure from your backer and they sort of in public, sort of wondering about their commitment going forward, you just unfortunately need everything to be working in your favor. And they don't have that, and it is quite sad, because I think certainly for a new team arriving in Formula One, I mean, from what I can think, I mean, probably Jordan back in 1992, whenever it was they arrived in Formula One, they did a great job when they got into F1. I mean, up in the points, big opportunity to score points on many occasions, which the team in a lot of ways also dropped themselves into a position where they didn't score those points in the pits and etc. But to see them slipping like they are, it's just sad for Haas. You just expected a lot more, because they really made an impression when they arrived.
Yeah, that's for sure. And also, with such a short season, you have to get those points. Alfa Romeo have got their points. The only two teams that don't have points at Latifi didn't get a point. So Williams and Haas are the only ones. Yeah, just outside. So, this is critical for them to get a point. Let's move on to Williams, another outstanding qualifying from George Russell. I mean, it was just fantastic. First time since Brazil 2018 that a Williams had actually got into Q2, which was terrific. And then, Gary, he was up there and he was charging it with the McLarens, and he was having a great couple of first laps. But then, unfortunately, it wasn't him, in my opinion, running out of talent. It was just him trying to push that car and saying, well, if they can turn in there, I'm going to turn in there. And unfortunately, the car just could not handle his what he wanted the car to do. And that, lended to him going off the circuit and losing all of the positions. But it just shows you that car is desperately under designed. They've got Mercedes power in there, and we've seen what it can do in Racing Point. But wow, they are struggling, unfortunately, just as badly as they were last year. Unfortunately
so. And I think, look, certainly didn't run out of talent. I think just driving that car way faster than it's actually able to go. And I think that's why you're going to find yourself on the absolute edge. And unfortunately, in that situation, the chances of going off are good, and it happened. But I think for the first time, he probably felt like in the race, being in the race, being up there with people he knows he can probably beat. So it was good for him. I think he'll take a lot of confidence from that as well, and just from a driving point of view. And that's all he can really do, is just focus on himself right now and get the best out of himself in a difficult position. And that may well stand him in good stead later on in his career, when he's actually got a car that's good and fighting for a championship, etc. Because it's not easy to do either of those things. Keep yourself motivated in a bum car, and also then one day, hopefully for him, fighting for a championship.
Yeah, let's hope so, and let's hope Williams just improves. They really need to be improve. I mean, they were way behind Haas, and if you sit there and think where the Ferrari engine is the Mercedes engine, they shouldn't be there. Let's speak about Ferrari, and let's just start off with how pressurized it is to be the team Ferrari. The amount of scrutiny you get, the press just hammers you all of the time, whether you're good or whether you're bad. If the driver makes a mistake, they get ridiculed. If the manager's not performing, it's, get rid of them all of the time. So first thing, Gary, the pressure of being a Ferrari driver and the pressure of the Ferrari team in Formula One is something that you cannot discount, whether they've got a good car or whether they've got a bad car.
Yeah, but I tell you what, yes, when they've got it's better to have the good car, better to be up there front. You're going to take only a little bit of that. But when you got this situation going on, it's very difficult. And look, I mean, what a disaster for them in the first corner. I mean, it just shouldn't be happening. But when you've got the chosen child making the mistake, it's a lot easier for everybody to kind of to stomach, in the team. So no big pressure. Whereas Vettel is now literally in the straight, and I say it, sort of in amazement that he's actually driving for a future in Formula One. This is the 4-time world champion. So he doesn't need his teammate driving up the inside of him and taking him out and doing all those kind of things. So the fact of the matter is he got into Q3 on Saturday in the messy conditions, and Leclerc didn't. So he could have had a sort of a half decent weekend. So Ferrari, just not good. You spoke about people changing and team managers changing. I don't know. I'm kind of not really... there's nothing in Binotto that says that he's going to be, a great team leader and lead this team to great heights. You just sort of feel there's a lot of, a lot of uneasiness in the whole environment there.
Yeah, that's very, very unfortunate to see. It does seem as though there's very uneasy within Ferrari. But Gary, I want to bring up something. In the days of and people always go, but look what happened with Schumacher and John Todt and Ross Brawn and Rory Byrne and all of those guys. We had Stefano Domenicali together with Aldo Costa, and they nearly won a championship with Alonso. Then you had Maurizio Arrivabene, and I'm trying to think who the technical or engine guy was. Binotto was actually the engine guy. And technical director. Now you've got Binotto, Gary, and I don't see who the second person is. I don't see anybody else standing up next to Binotto or him calling on anybody else. And this is what worries me. Any leadership, you need a good second person. Toto Wolff has got James Allison and Shovley on the side. Red Bull have got Christian Horner. They've got Adrian Newey. They've got Helmut Marko on that side as well. Ferrari have put everything on Binotto. And something goes wrong, all of a sudden he's got to take 100% responsibility, which I accept because he is the boss. But somewhere along the line, they're missing a very strong operating officer, for the want of a better term.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you mentioned Mercedes-Benz in that. When you think of Mercedes-Benz, you just think of depth in their team. And, Ferrari right now, you just don't believe, unless they're hiding everybody away from us, but you just don't get the sense that there's a lot of depth in their team. And it's a far cry from certainly, you mentioned the Schumacher era of Todt and Ross Brawn and Rory Byrne and everybody else. Aldo Costa even was there in those days. A lot of good people in that team. And right now, we don't know. And of course, the car's not quick. A lot of people are quite happy to sit, behind closed doors and not let people know exactly who they are. But it's just unfortunately, I think we said it a couple of weeks ago, if not during lockdown, that Ferrari's in a situation that reminds us of sort of like the early 90s again, where it's just not coming together, and there's just a lot going on there that doesn't need to be going on.
Yeah, gee whiz, and man, those were dark days as well. Gary, just one thing on this Ferrari engine, and we spoke about it last week. I still find it perplexing that Ferrari, after the Singapore Grand Prix, they said, listen, we want to check everything, and they took all of their parts. Either they've got this engine sitting in waiting and nobody knows about it, that they're going to slap into the back of this car, that is going to improve. But the current direction where this engine is, it's a dud. I mean, this is now by far the slowest engine on the circuit. And if you sit back and think, what Enzo Ferrari said in his day, he said aerodynamics are for those who don't know how to build powerful engines. He must be doing like a mouse wheel in his grave at the moment, because he's got the worst engine out there, which is just so un-Ferrari.
It is certainly, and again, just touching on where we've been before, the fact they had something in that engine that made it super quick, and they've needed to take it out, and the thing has just been absolutely nowhere. And are they going to be able to do something again, but within the regulation this time, to actually get that car going in such a short season as well? And that it just doesn't look good for any of those Ferrari engine cars right now.
It's a very, very sad state. There we go. So, I mean, that was from top to toe. It's not often that you sit there and say, well, there's Ferrari right at the bottom of the timesheets, but that's exactly what happened in the Styrian Grand Prix. Now, this coming weekend, before we talk about Hungary, of course, Gary, we've got Brad Binder. MotoGP returns in Jerez. Brad Binder, and the teams are all out doing testing today. Brad wasn't very quick, I'll be honest, this morning. I think he was second last. But I mean, isn't this just amazing for Brad Binder and, of course, for South Africa and South African motorsport to have a rider in the premier category of two wheels in the world? I'm so excited for this weekend, and specifically for Brad, and what a lovely oak he is as well.
Absolutely, and I think everybody that's got into motorsport is going to be watching and supporting Brad. It's a big deal for us, Sasha, and I know that there has been some press on Brad. I saw him on the news last week and people talking about it, but at the end of the day, I think it needs a bit more. And I think that nobody can underestimate just sort of where this guy has come from and how he's worked his way up through Moto3, Moto2, and now into MotoGP on a factory bike. I just think all of us need to get behind him and just understand that what he's done is really special. We all know that it's a little bit more difficult for South Africans to do things on the world stage right now with the way things are financially for everybody. And yes, you can't estimate the job that he's done, and just well done to Brad and the family for the hard years of work. And we just hope that that KTM is going to be a good enough bike for him to be able to show what he's really about. But I think as a kind of guy, if you look at his career, he's really built on it and sort of taken it step by step. And you've got to believe that maybe even if it's not the best weekend this weekend, you've got to believe he's the kind of guy that can sort of build on something and get himself up to the front somewhere in time.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't agree more. The one thing that over the years, the one thing that Brad did suffer was sometimes that little bit of one lap pace, which I'm sure he'll work on, as his career explodes. But I think it's going to just be fantastic. I just want to give you some of the times. Marc Marquez was quickest. This was his first practice from today, ahead of Rins and Rossi. And Binder was, when I say, at the bottom of the timesheets, don't forget, two wheels is quite different. He was 1.3 seconds off the pace, Gary. But, in MotoGP terms, it's not like it's not like 1.3 seconds in the world of Formula One.
No, certainly not, and listen, let's see how it goes. I'm not the biggest bike specialist or any bike specialist for that matter, but I'll tell you what, racing's racing, and as I said, Brad to me just looks like the kind of guy that can build on things. So I think the most important thing is obviously for him to stay on the bike, and hopefully we don't have sort of any injuries involved to hold him back. And I think he'll definitely progress. We saw it in Moto2, we saw it in Moto3 over the years. I think the guy's up for the job, and listen, the fact that he's one of us, at the top line of motorsport it makes one very, very proud, and it's going to be a great Sunday afternoon, I can tell you that.
Yeah, going to be wonderful. All right, this weekend it is the Hungarian Grand Prix. We've been in Austria, Gary. Of course, the Formula One world, adhering to all of the COVID-19 regulations and specifications, practicing social distancing, have to wear masks. This is slightly different in Hungary, and that is that the teams and the personnel, specifically from the UK and non-European people, have got to either stay in their hotel or at the track. They cannot move elsewhere. If they are caught out there, they could get a fine up to 15,000 euros or even face imprisonment. But I mean, those are the rules and regulations. And if you sit there and say, well, if you just adhere to the rules, we can go racing, everyone's going to say, let's go racing. So it is going to be a little bit different this weekend for all of the personnel and the drivers. and it looks like it's going to be pretty hot pretty decent weather this weekend in Hungary as well. So can you believe it? 3 in a row so far, and it's going to be, unfortunately, I hate to say this, but it's going to be much the same, in my opinion, as to what happened in Austria version 2.
Yeah, more than likely going to be the case. We know that, but we obviously hope for something different. But just going back to the guys having to be in isolation, over the weekend. I mean, listen, it's a small price to pay for being able to actually go out there and actually go racing in Grand Prix. We can't even buy beer at the moment. I mean, so listen, sitting in the hotel is not going to be the end of the world getting ready for a Grand Prix. But yeah, listen, the thing with Hungary's thrown up some great races. There's been some races that have been really okay, but there's been some really good races there as well. So you just don't know. And us being the eternal optimist in terms of wanting a good race, we'll never give it up until it's actually the checkered flags come out and we've got what we've got. So I'm always excited about it, and anything can happen. But yes, we know what the probabilities are, but it is motor racing, and anything can happen.
Yeah, I must say, having been to Budapest a few times for Formula One Grand Prix, I just sit there and know how frustrated all of those personnel are going to be, because it is one of the vibiest cities in the world. And having to sit in your hotel room or staying at the track, it's just one of those things. You're there to do a job, so you might as well go and do a job. Gary, let's hope for another, as you say, the eternal optimist when it comes to racing. Let's hope for another stunning, and safe Grand Prix this weekend. Yeah, no one's got COVID. I don't want to be the commentator's curse so far, but so far so good for Formula One.
So far so good. They've obviously bought the right testing kits and they're giving them the right results, so everything looks good over there for them. So look, it just shows you that if you in that small world of Formula One, and I'm talking just about the general world right now, if you adhere to everything and adhere to the regulations, they seem to be keeping it under control, which is great. But they also afforded the opportunity of flying around in private jets and what have you. So the isolation, I think, in terms of what they do, comes at a cost, but it is Formula One and they're doing a great job.
Yeah, 100%. I'm just trying to get here. Okay, the same time as us as well in Hungary and Budapest. So free practice will start on Friday at 11 a.m. South African time. Then, of course, 3 o'clock. Then on Sunday, 12 o'clock. And qualifying will be at 3. And the race will be at 10 past 3. Gary, I'm sure you and I will chat at length during the course of this weekend. Let's hope for a great race.
Right. Thanks a lot, guys.
There we go. That wraps it up. Yes, of course, tonight being a Wednesday, we will be back on our normal slot, all depending on load shedding for the next Grand Prix. But thank you very much for your time, and enjoy the Grand Prix. This is the F1 PitBox.
Follow us on social media, Instagram, Facebook and Twitter at F1 Sasha.